How has your job changed since all of this went into place?
Since the teacher evaluation went into place, there's a lot more testing, a lot more looking at data, and a lot of stress, worrying if my kids are going to make my SLO. And a lot of fear. I don't have a minute's peace. I'm always thinking about it. And my kids are very stressed because I'm stressing a lot of the testing, and you need to make sure that you learn it, and you have to make sure you get it, and there's a lot more stress.
Some people hearing that would go, well, why wasn't she stressed out before, worrying about achievement of her own kids?
Well,
How's it different?
I've always looked at data before to drive what I'm doing. The kids aren't getting it. I need to do this. I need to bring the kids back in small group and reteach that. But what it is now is if they don't get it, I possibly could be labeled ineffective now. Where I could, the evaluation system, and we've always had an evaluation system since I've been in the city of Pawtucket. We've always been evaluated. So being evaluated is not new to me. The amount and the rigor of this evaluation is. We have an SLO, we have a lesson plan that we have to write, we have formal evaluations, informal evaluations, and there's a lot more. There's the reflective piece, which I really like the reflective piece because you get to look back at the lesson and see what went well, what didn't go well, what you need to change, what could you possibly do better next time. So I like that piece.
Sounds like it's a lot more intense for you.
It's much more intense, and there's always something. We have to do a professional growth goal, and it's not so much that piece, but I could be labeled highly effective in my professional practice, and I have one student not meet their SLO, and I will no longer be highly effective. I could drop down to an ineffective category.
This is a different year for teachers across the state. How has your job changed?
There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress, and I think when that takes place, the kids can feel it. The students they know what's going on. And sometimes focusing on that takes away from focusing on what we should be, which is the student. Like Sharon was saying regarding our SLOs, the math department, we work on growth goals. There are two types of goals. There's a growth goal and a mastery goal. So we're not necessarily looking at growth over the year. We're actually focusing on one particular task, and we're looking to see how many will perform proficiently, what's the percentage that will perform above proficient. And the kids can feel that pressure that we're feeling, and it's just not conducive to student learning. When we're spending so much time worrying about, and I think overall teachers aren't anti-evaluation or test taking, but when we're relying solely on one test, first of all, some students aren't good test takers. Some of the language on the test is hard to understand. In the math department, we actually meet and do an item analysis of the NECAP test.
What is that?
What we do is we look at the data from our students, and we look to see which questions they got incorrect and why did they get it incorrect. And we have a discussion as a department. We look at the question, and actually when we're looking at it, we have a disagreement about what the question is really asking. So if experts in the field are having questions, imagine the English language learner who may be struggling with math. On top of it are novices at reading and writing English. It's a struggle for them.
You said that that your job's being based solely on that, but it isn't being based solely on that one test, right? I mean, there's a couple of criteria that you're looking at.
Right, but for students, I guess from the student's perspective, in order for them to graduate, they need to have a 2 on that test.
I see.
So for them,
you didn't mean for the teacher, you meant
correct,
for the kids.
for the students. They have to have a 2. So as teachers, we build their confidence in a specific subject like math, and after they take that test, which is extremely difficult for them, they feel defeated. And that shouldn't be the purpose of a test.
Is this anxiety getting in the way of them learning?
I don't think it's the anxiety is getting in the way of them learning. It's getting in the way of them taking a test where they know they need to achieve a 2 on it, otherwise they're not going to graduate. It's a very stressful situation to be in. As teachers, we assess every day. It's ongoing. And for them to be assessed on one test at one time, it just doesn't seem right.
Sharon, weigh in on that if you
Well,
could.
I really wanted to say that because I think about this all the time. You're talking about, especially I'm going by Pawtucket. I don't go home with these children. I don't know who is going home and being fed dinner. I don't know what they're going home with. I mean, I don't know whose dog died, and it's a one and done test. They're going to take this test, and if they had a bad day and they don't perform, they're being held accountable, as am I. I mean, shouldn't they have multiple measures? And my other question that I always ask is, what is the reason for this test? Why was it developed? And I look at it, and NECAP was not developed as a high-stakes test. It was really developed to see how well our students were doing and what we could do better. And I feel the same way with the screening tools that I'm using for my SLO, that they were not created to be high-stakes tests. They were created to inform instruction and to see how well the students were ready to learn 6th grade material. I don't believe the tests were created to say, you didn't get it, you're being penalized, and oh wait, your teacher might not be hired back again. I don't think that's the purpose. I also don't know, what is the research on this? Is there any research to say that this is really going to make a better teacher or a better student?
Do you feel like at this point that you are teaching to the test?
At this moment, I feel that I'm going to go from my experience for NECAP testing. We prep the kids for the NECAP. We do practice. It comes right from the district, and I get them ready to take the test.
At what's on the cutting room floor? What's at the expense?
Well,
teaching?
the expenses, I spent 4 weeks doing that for math and for reading and writing, so I did not start my curriculum until 4 weeks into the year. So my 6th grade curriculum was 4 weeks behind.
But explain to somebody at home why that might be bad. I mean, what you just said to me was, I spent 4 weeks teaching.
To a test.
But you said teaching math and reading. Isn't that what
Yeah.
we want to? So why is
We
it?
absolutely do, but I also have a scope and sequence in a curriculum that I need to teach that I'm 4 weeks behind. And when you're teaching a curriculum and they give you a pacing guide, I'm way off my pacing guide. I'm starting to stress, am I going to forget? These kids need to know 6th grade material before they leave me. I spent 4 weeks teaching to a NECAP test, and now I'm worried I'm not going to meet that scope and sequence.
And that actually, with her being unable to cover the material that she needs, it affects those students coming to the high school. Because what will happen is they're not properly prepared. I shouldn't say properly prepared, but they may not have everything they need to be successful at the high school level, because she may have had to take a stop in what she needed to do this test prep. At the high school, what we do, we have an excellent math coordinator and a math coach. They create for us a test, the released items that we should be going over with our students. It takes a lot of time out of our class, because the items that, the released items that we need to go over may not fall into where we are right now in our curriculum. So it's disconnected. What we're going over is disconnected from what we are teaching. So for me, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's extremely time consuming.
Have you seen a change in your students?
far
Now
as
look,
the-
school isn't supposed to be all fun and games, but is it a drag for them now, you think?
It is, because one, they feel the pressure that they have to do this, and they hear from the other students. When they're preparing, the students that have already taken the test will let them know. In their mind, they're thinking they're not going to be successful on it, because they're hearing how difficult it is. And I proctor the exam, the NECAP test, and the kids struggle. They want to do well. You see it. And as proctors, we cannot help them.
You ever see a kid lose it in class?
What they do is they get extremely frustrated and they put their head down. And you go over and you tell them to get their head up and they'll get working. But you can see their frustration because they want to do well. You can see it in their face. But the test is just, they struggle with it.
How about you, Sharon? Have you ever seen a student
Yeah,
react?
I've had a few. I mean, one under the floor crying one year. It's very stressful for them. One who was afraid to come to school because they were afraid they were going to fail the test and not do well. Students generally want to do well.
Right.
They, in the anxiety, I've never in my life seen so many children with anxiety problems, or adults.
And you're attributing it to...
I'm attributing to not just school. I do think that adds to it. I just think that, maybe it's, we live in an inner city. I mean, they have other issues, and let's pile this on top of them. They're little people. There's only so much they can take.
Do either of you know any teachers? I was looking for a teacher to chat about how stressful this is and how it's impacted their career. I haven't had any reach out to me and say, hey, this is great. But let's be honest, anecdotally, do either of you know any teachers that are satisfied with the current evaluation system?
I don't know any. However,
Right.
it's not that they're not opposed to being evaluated.
Right.
They're not opposed to having the lesson plan portion and the professional growth portion. It's the student learning piece
Right.
that is bothering everybody.
Yeah, anything to add?
It's the same feeling at the high school. Teachers it's not the evaluation process. Everyone needs to be evaluated. That's just the professional thing to do. But when you add on student learning objectives, it just adds so much pressure, and the students can feel that as their teachers should be happy going to work.
Are you happy going to work?
I am. I love my job. I love what I do. I wouldn't want to be any other place than at Tolman High School teaching math to my students. Unfortunately, there are some teachers who get extremely frustrated and have a hard time dealing with it. But we are a good support to one another, whether that's at grade level, content area. We really help one another when we see a teacher may be getting a little bit more frustrated. We guide them through it.
How about you? Is this, the way things have changed, made you reflect
I've
on...
often thought, I don't know of any other job that has to work as hard as we do. I know people don't believe that, but I mean, ask my family. I am in work by 7:45 every morning, and I am home most nights, probably at 6, and I take work home with me every evening. Every weekend I'm doing work, and on top of this, I have to do this amount of, evaluation, which it took hours away from my family.
Right.
My daughter's home on leave from college, and I have had to spend one whole day with her.
I don't want to get off topic, but you said something interesting before we were rolling here. What was it you said to me about being hated?
Well, I feel the public, loves to hate teachers. We are always seen as the bad guy. They think we work, 6 hours a day. Why are we complaining? We only want more money. And every teacher that I talk to, I know lots of teachers. I have tons of teacher friends. I belong to several professional groups, and every teacher I know works so hard. They are in there early, they're late, and they buy their students things, they provide support. I know teachers who've gone and bought their students clothes. We do so much for our students. We are not the bad guys, and we often feel we are. We feel we're hated. However, if you ask my students, they don't hate us. They love us. We're there.
Do you feel that from the public?
I do, yeah. I mean, occasionally I'll hear a comment when I say I'm a public school teacher.
What do you hear?
Oh, those unions. Oh, you teachers are very greedy.
Yeah, all you want is money.
And I really feel that they're misinformed. So sometimes I'll explain to them, we're not greedy. We really want what's best for children. What's best for teachers is what's best for children. They go hand in hand. And whether they agree with me or not, I know in my heart that I care for my students, every single one of them, and I want them to be successful. That's why I got into this profession.
What do you see? What are the problems that are arising this year that maybe you didn't see last year or the year before?
Right. One of the biggest things are people sticking to the timelines, because we're finding it's virtually impossible for administrators to go through all the documentation and give feedback to all the teachers. If you think of Tolman High School, we have almost 100 faculty members. And for them to go through a lesson plan, like my lesson plan was 6 pages, for them to go through the entire lesson plan, to go through, they check our SLOs, our professional growth goal, our self-reflection. It's extremely time-consuming for them and for us. So we're finding that some of the timelines aren't being met. We're finding that there's an evaluation that's scheduled, but because there's an issue that has come up in the building, they've had to attend to that, and the evaluation we may have to switch some dates. So it's those types of things that have come up.
I actually hear you feeling bad for administrators.
I do.
You know what? We're in this together. It's not teachers against administrators. We're working together. So we want to make sure this process works, and in order for that to work efficiently, we can't do one without the other.
What would you like to say to the commissioner after having almost a full year of this under your belt? What would you say to her?
A couple of things. One is regarding the SLOs. Where's the research that's backing up why we're using these? That's one of the questions that I'm even hearing from teachers. Why are we using them? Where's the research to back this up? So that's one of them. The second.
So do you feel like a guinea pig in a way? Or maybe you are the research.
Almost, right, perhaps. Perhaps we are the research. That's one of them. The second is our concern, especially at the high school level, is what's going to happen to the students who do not, right now, if they don't obtain a 2 on their kneecap or whatever the state assessment may be, they need to retake it their senior year in order to graduate. But what's going to happen if they retake it their senior year and don't achieve a 2? What's going to happen to these students? Are we going to have a large amount of students not actually getting a diploma due to the fact that they can't earn a 2 on a one-time test?
So you know the response to that, right? The response always is, well, you devalue the diploma if you're giving them out for students who just don't deserve it. How do you respond to that?
The student has spent endless hours in a classroom learning content, and we're going to compare that to a one-time test. It doesn't make sense.
All right, Sharon, what would you like to say to the commissioner? Any advice?
I don't know that I'm qualified to give advice, but I can tell her that, the atmosphere has changed. Teachers are stressed. I've never in my life seen the amount of anxiety that I'm seeing. I am all about research. I don't know where the research is for this. I say this constantly. Why are we implementing something when there's no research? We're asked to use data to drive our instruction, but we don't know, and we always use something that's research-based, but we don't know where the research is for this. Is this really going to make better teachers? And if someone's getting a 4 in their professional growth but not meeting their SLO, does that really mean that they should be ineffective?
What is the one word you would use to describe your job right now?
Frustrating.
Christina, what's the one word you would use to describe your job right now?
Stressful. I don't want to. I really hate to. Stressful isn't really negative, but it's really not positive. I love my job. It's everything else that is prohibiting us from getting done what we need for our students to be successful.